Kansas Territory, June 1874. The barn door slammed shut with the sound of finality, the iron chain rattling as it locked. Olivia Darnell's wrists burned where the rope cut into her skin, and the sour stink of mildew and horse sweat clung to her dress. Dust floated in the shafts of light cutting through the warped slats of wood, and somewhere up in the rafters, a swallow called out into the silence. They left her there like she was nothing. She had known they would not forgive her. Not after the trial, not after she stood up in front of the whole town and told the truth about what Mayor Cutler had done. About how he had come into her father's store drunk, how he had cornered her behind the counter. She had pushed him away, slapped him across the face. And when he stumbled and cracked his head on the stove, she had run. The doctor said it was the fall that killed him, not the slap. But it did not matter. He was the mayor. She was a storekeeper's daughter with no family left and no husband to speak for her. So they called her a liar, a whore, a murderer. And now she was chained like an animal in the old Miller barn on the edge of town. No food, no water. No one would come. They said they would let her rot. Olivia pressed her forehead to her knees and breathed through the pain in her arms. Her lips were cracked, her throat dry. She could not cry anymore. She had done it all the first night. She did not remember falling asleep. Only the sound of rustling outside the barn woke her, quick and cautious. A twilight breeze slipped through a crack in the wall. Olivia lifted her head, heart pounding. Footsteps circled the barn light, quiet. Then the metal latch rattled. She flinched back as the door creaked open. A man stepped inside, tall and lean, his shoulders strong beneath a weathered buckskin shirt. He moved like he belonged to the night. His eyes caught the moonlight, dark, watchful, steady. His long black hair was tied back with a strip of rawhide. He did not speak. Olivia's voice came out hoarse. Please, please do not hurt me. He crouched down near her, slow, careful. His gaze traced the rope around her wrists, the bruises on her cheek, the blood crusted on her temple. He pulled a knife from his belt and held it up, not toward her, but to the rope. I am not here to hurt you, he said, voice low and rough. I am here to get you out. She stared at him, blinking hard. Why? He looked at her for a long time. Because no one else did. The blade sliced through the rope in one clean motion. Her arms dropped, useless and trembling. She cried out, curling forward, pain flaring through the blood-starved muscles. He caught her shoulders before she fell. My name is Wayan Proudfire, he said, steadying her. Can you walk? I do not know. He nodded once, then lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. Her head fell against his chest. He smelled like cedar smoke and wind. Her eyes fluttered shut. Outside, the night was wide and quiet. He moved fast and silent across the open field behind the barn, staying low, keeping to the trees. The town was sleeping. No one saw. By the time they reached his horse, Olivia was shivering. He wrapped her in his blanket and helped her into the saddle, then climbed up behind her, holding her steady. His arms were warm around her. She leaned into him without thinking. They rode for an hour, maybe two, she could not tell. Her body was too tired to keep track. The sky had just begun to lighten when he finally slowed the horse near a small creek surrounded by cottonwoods. A thin line of smoke curled from a fire ring. A small shelter stood nearby, made of woven branches and buffalo hide. This is my place, he said. You are safe here. He helped her down gently, carried her inside, and laid her on a bed of soft pelts. She could not stop shaking. I will get water, he said. And food. She caught his hand before he could leave. You are Cheyenne? He nodded once. Why would you help someone like me? His jaw tightened, but not with anger. My sister was left behind once. I was too late for her. I will not be too late again. He slipped outside. Olivia lay there, staring at the shadows dancing on the hide walls. Her wrists throbbed. Her ribs ached. But something had cracked open in her chest. Something that felt like air, like the beginning of hope. Later, he brought her water and a cup of warm broth. He fed her with quiet hands. He did not ask questions. He did not pity her. That night, She slept without fear for the first time in weeks. The days passed slowly. Wayan taught her how to tend the fire, how to gather wild onions near the creek, how to wrap her wrists with willow bark soaked in water. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice was calm and sure. Each morning he left to hunt or check the trails. Each evening he returned, and she found herself watching the way his shoulders moved as he skinned rabbits or carved wood by the fire. One night, as the wind stirred the leaves overhead, Olivia sat beside him and asked, "Why do you live out here alone?" He stared into the fire. "I was a scout for the army once. They used me to track my own people. I thought I was helping keep the peace, but they only wanted land. After the Sand Creek massacre, I left. I could not wear their coat anymore." "I am sorry," she whispered. He looked at her then. Really looked. "And you? What did they do to you?" She swallowed hard. "They chained me in that barn. Said I killed their mayor. But I only defended myself." His jaw clenched. "You do not have to say more. I believe you." She turned her face to the fire. "I have nowhere to go. You do now." She looked at him. His eyes were soft in the firelight. He reached out slowly and brushed his fingers against the bandage on her wrist. "I will not let them hurt you again," he said. And something broke open in her. Something warm. Something that felt like safety. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He did not move away. They sat like that, quiet, close. The fire crackled low. His hand found hers. He held it gently, as if it mattered. And Olivia, for the first time in her whole life, felt wanted. Not for what she could give. Not for what someone thought she owed. But simply for being. That night, as she lay curled beneath a buffalo hide, she heard him whisper before sleep took her. "You are not alone anymore." Rain came 2 days later, steady and gray, soaking the cottonwoods and turning the path along the creek to soft earth. Olivia stood beneath the low awning of the shelter, her shawl pulled tight, watching the water bead on the leaves. Beside her, Wayan knelt by the fire pit, coaxing flame from damp tinder with practiced patience. "You don't curse the rain?" she asked, voice quiet in the hush of morning. He didn't look up. "It keeps us hidden." She took that in, nodding slowly. "And you think they'll look for me?" Wayan blew gently on the ember. "They'll try. But not hard. They knew what they were doing when they left you." A silence settled between them, not heavy, just real. Olivia stepped out into the drizzle and knelt by the stream to rinse the tin cup he'd carved for her. Her fingers were steadier now. The cuts on her wrists had scabbed over, and her ribs no longer screamed when she bent. She breathed easier out here, even when the sky was low. When she returned, Wayan had coaxed the fire to a steady flicker, a small pot warming over the flame. He handed her the bone-handled spoon. "I found wild parsnips," he said. She took the spoon without brushing his hand, though she wanted to. "You always know what's safe." He finally met her eyes then. "I've learned to be careful." She stirred the broth, steam curling around her face. "You ever think about going back?" "To a town. I have no place in towns. You speak their language better than most of them. I know how they think. That's different." She tasted the broth and found it rich, earthy. "You ever miss people?" He didn't answer right away. The fire made his face unreadable, but the pause spoke for him. "I miss my grandfather," he said at last. "He taught me to hunt with silence. Said the earth will speak if you stop trying to talk over it." She smiled faintly. "I think I talk too much. You listen when it matters." They ate in quiet, the rain easing into mist. He handed her a dry strip of venison wrapped in bark. "I watched the trail last night," he said. "One man passed. Didn't stop. He rode south. Someone from town? Didn't wear a badge. Could be a drifter." She chewed slowly. "If someone does come, I don't want to run." He studied her, that same stillness in his gaze. "Then we prepare." By afternoon, the clouds had thinned to pale streaks. Wayan took her deeper into the trees, teaching her where to step to avoid snapping twigs, how to read the moss on the rocks for direction. He didn't make her feel foolish when she stumbled, only waited for her to find her footing. They paused near a rocky outcrop where the land sloped toward the river. He crouched and motioned her close. "Deer bedded here, he said, pointing to the flattened grass. Not long ago. She knelt beside him, fingers brushing the indentations. How do you see it so fast? Practice. And patience. She glanced at him. You have both. Not always. She leaned back on her heels. You ever get angry? His jaw shifted. I used to. It burned everything. I carry it different now. How? I build things. I teach. I remember who I am. She picked up a smooth stone and turned it in her palm. I don't know who I am anymore. You're alive. That's a start. They sat until the sun broke through a shaft of gold warming the mossy stones. Olivia closed her eyes, letting it touch her face. When she opened them, Wayan was watching her, not with hunger, not with pity, just quiet notice. Like she was something worth seeing. That night, they worked side by side to shore up the shelter wall with fresh boughs. He handed her a length of rawhide and she tied the branches in place, her fingers growing surer with each knot. You've not asked what I'll do next, she said as they worked. I figure you'll know when you're ready. She paused. And if I don't want to leave? He looked at her then, long and careful. Then you stay. You wouldn't mind? This place was meant for two. His voice was low, measured. I just didn't know who the other would be. She didn't answer, not with words. Just reached for another branch, her hand brushing his. He didn't pull away. Later, after the fire burned low and the night settled deep around them, Olivia lay beneath the hides, listening to the wind shift through the trees. Wayan's breathing was steady beside her. I used to dream of a different life, she whispered. He turned his head toward her. What kind? One where I didn't have to be afraid to speak. Or be alone unless I chose it. He was silent a long moment. You're living that now. She turned toward him, close enough to feel his warmth. I want to learn more. About your way of seeing the world. I'll teach you. Their hands met between them, fingers weaving slow, unhurried. Wayan? I don't want to sleep alone tonight. He moved just enough to close the space between them, his arms slipping around her waist, steady and sure. You won't. And in the quiet that followed, no fear stirred. Only the sound of two hearts finding rhythm. A blue heron glided low over the riverbank, its wings steady against the morning hush. Olivia stood barefoot in the shallows, her skirts hitched above her knees, fingertips trailing through the cold water. The river curved quiet and wide here, hidden by tall reeds and overhanging cottonwood limbs. She hadn't spoken yet that day. Some mornings were like that. Wayan didn't press. He knelt a few paces away, repairing a broken edge of the fishing trap with sinew thread and a bone needle. His hands worked with quiet rhythm, and the only sound between them was the rush of the current and the distant rustle of leaves. She watched the water swirl past her ankles, then looked over. Do you think the land remembers what's happened to it? She asked. Wayan paused with the needle drawn halfway through the weave. The land doesn't forget, but it doesn't hold it against us? Not forever. No, he said, but it doesn't heal from pretending. You have to let it hurt first. She nodded, though the knot in her throat made it hard to swallow. It's easier to be angry than to be hollow. The hollow's the part that grows, he said, tying off the thread. Anger blocks it. She stepped back onto the bank, brushing droplets from her calves with the hem of her skirt. I think I stopped growing the day my father died. I just didn't know it. What was he like? He read aloud to me every night. Had a crooked finger from hammering nails wrong. Kept his shop ledger in perfect script even when he was half blind by lamplight. And he never once raised his voice at me even when I dropped his best scale into the cellar. Wayan smiled faintly but didn't speak. I wish he could see me now, she said. Not because I've done anything grand. Just, I'm not hiding anymore. You're still becoming, he said. She moved beside him, sitting cross-legged on the grass. The trap lay between them, repaired and ready. His hands rested on his knees. Do you ever think about teaching again? She asked. I never stopped. I just stopped calling it that. Could you teach me to track like you? Not just the deer beds and moss. I mean real tracking. He met her gaze. It only works if you trust your body again. I want to. He studied her face, then gave a single nod. Then we start with wind. That afternoon, they moved uphill through pine and scrub, past low boulders still warm from the sun. He showed her how to feel the direction of the wind on her jawline, how to move so that her scent didn't carry ahead of her. "It's not about disappearing," he said. "It's about knowing what notices you." She stepped where he stepped, careful and deliberate. When a small fox darted from the brush and froze mid-bound, she held perfectly still. Her breath caught. The animal watched her for a heartbeat, then vanished without fear. That night, back at the shelter, Wayan placed a new strip of hide over a frame near the fire. He dipped a carved stick into ochre pigment and began a slow, deliberate painting. Olivia leaned against the door frame, watching in silence until he paused. "What are you drawing?" "Memory of place," he said. "So it doesn't vanish." She stepped closer. The shapes were unfamiliar curving lines, a cluster of dots, a figure with outstretched arms. "Is that me?" He didn't answer directly. "You changed the place." She knelt beside him, heart beating hard. "And have I changed you?" He glanced down, fingers still stained with red. "You made me stop counting time." She reached for his hand, brushing the ochre from his knuckles. "I used to think I'd die without being seen. You're seen now." Their eyes held. The fire cracked low. She rose and turned toward the bedrolls, heart-thudding. "Will you come to me tonight?" He followed without hesitation. When he laid beside her, she took his face in both hands and kissed him slow, certain, and without trembling. His palm found the base of her spine. Neither of them rushed. The night was theirs and no one would steal it. Later, when their breathing slowed and the moonlight filtered through the shelter seams, she traced the curve of his collarbone with one finger. "Wayan," she whispered. "What would it mean if I stayed with you? Not just for now." He brushed her hair behind her ear. "It would mean we build something neither of us has seen before. I want that. Then we make it." He pulled her close again, and she let herself be held not out of need, but out of choice. Outside, the heron called once more, circling above the river before gliding out of sight. By early August, the river had pulled low into itself, leaving cracked banks and sun-warmed stones along its edge. The cottonwoods rattled dry in the wind, their leaves turning the color of tarnished brass. Grasshoppers sprang from the underbrush as Olivia moved through the tall grass, a woven basket pressed to her hip. She scanned for wild plum, the small purple fruit ripening early this year, clinging beneath the thorny branches clustered near the base of the ridge. Wayan had gone before sunrise, taking his bow and a waterskin, saying only that he needed to walk the southern hills. She hadn't asked why she trusted his silences now as much as his words. Still, she found herself watching the tree line, listening for the soft rhythm of his return. She crouched beside a low thicket, fingers stained from crushed berries, when a rustle cut across the stillness. Olivia stilled, heart-thudding once, then again when a figure stepped from the trees, a woman, wrapped in a dark wool blanket, hair streaked with gray. They stared at each other across the clearing. "You're the one he watches over," the woman said. Her voice was quiet but firm, shaped by another tongue beneath the English. Olivia rose slowly, not afraid, but unsteady. "You know Wayan?" The woman's eyes flicked to the basket. "You picked the plum too soon. They'll be bitter." "I didn't know." "You do now." She stepped forward, her bare feet soundless on the dry ground. "I am his aunt. My name is Taysai." Olivia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't know he had family nearby. He doesn't speak of us much. We live farther west, near the Red Hills. I come sometimes when the wind turns." Taysai's gaze lingered. "You've stayed longer than the others." "There were others?" "Women who passed through. Some lost. Some only looking to be saved. I'm not here to be saved. That's why you still are." Taysai's mouth softened. "You carry your own weight." Olivia bent and picked up the basket. "He's never told me about them. He wouldn't. They weren't part of his road. You are." Taysai reached out and touched Olivia's shoulder briefly. "He listens when you speak. That matters. Do you think he'll want to go back with you?" Taysai shook her head. "He belongs to this land now, not ours. But I wanted to see for myself who he gave his nights to. He's not careless. I won't hurt him." "I know. That's why I came with no warning." They stood beneath the rustling limbs, not quite strangers, not quite kin. Then Taysai turned back toward the trees. When he returns, tell him I left tobacco wrapped in red cloth by the fire ring. He'll understand. When Wayan came back just before dusk, he carried a brace of grouse and a crease in his brow that eased only when he saw her waiting by the shelter with smoke rising behind her. There was someone here, Olivia said, handing him the wrapped tobacco. He turned it in his hand, recognizing the folds. Taysai, she said you'd know. She's the last of my mother's line. She said the plums were bitter. A faint smile touched his mouth. She would. They cleaned the birds together, setting the meat to roast over the low flames. The scent drifted into the trees. Olivia passed him a drink of cool river water. She asked if you go back. I never considered it. She said the others didn't stay. I didn't ask them to. For a long moment, only the fire spoke between them. Then Olivia reached across the space and placed her hand over his. I'm not passing through. I know. Later, they sat beneath the open sky, stars sharp above them. Wayan leaned back against the shelter wall and she curled beside him, her head resting beneath his collarbone. There's a half-built cabin west of here, he said. I started it last summer. Never finished. Why not? I didn't have a reason to. Her fingers traced the stitching on his sleeve. Do you now? He turned his head, his breath brushing her temple. I do. The fire burned low, throwing flickers against the hide walls. Somewhere beyond the trees, an owl called once and fell silent. I want to plant, she said. Not just gather. I want rows and soil and something that grows because I put it there. Then we'll clear land, he said, and build what the others never got close enough to imagine. I'll learn, she whispered. Whatever it takes. You already have. In the quiet that followed, there was no fear, no shadow of what had come before, only the shape of something steady beginning to take root. The first frost came early that year, a thin white veil spread across the meadow grass before sunrise. Olivia stepped outside barefoot, breath fogging in the air, and ran her fingertips over the rim of the water barrel. Ice laced the surface. She smiled. Wayan stepped out behind her, fastening the last toggle of his coat. His gaze swept the hills, then settled on her with a quiet warmth that had grown sharper each passing week. The elk will move soon, he said. We'll need to finish the smokehouse before they do. She nodded, arms crossed over her chest. The roof frame's ready. I can help pack the clay if you cut the last of the willow. We'll do it together today. After breakfast. He turned to go in, but she caught his hand. Wait. He looked down at her, eyes steady and dark. I want to ask you something, she said. He didn't speak, only waited. Do you want a home with me? She asked, voice quiet but certain. Not just this place, not just surviving. I mean, do you want to build a life? There was no pause. I already am. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I want to marry you. Wayan's brow lifted slightly, the only sign of surprise. Why now? Because I'm not afraid anymore. And because I don't want to wait for someone else to grant permission for the life we're already living. He cupped her face, the roughness of his hand grounding her. You already carry my heart. If you want my name, you have it. She leaned into his palm. I want both. The wedding took place 3 days later beneath the oldest pine at the top of the ridge where the land curved open to the wind. No preacher came. No paper was signed. But Wayan laid a red cloth across the ground and Olivia gathered sage and dried sweetgrass and they spoke vows with no one to witness but the trees. I will walk beside you, she said, holding his hands in hers. In every season, even the ones that hurt. I will carry your name in my bones, he answered. And guard your quiet. They sealed it with a kiss, the kind that grew from the roots of everything they built. When they stepped away from the tree, Wayan tied a strip of beaded leather around her wrist, the colors woven in a pattern she didn't know but would learn. That night, she lay with her head against his chest and whispered, I never thought love could grow from silence. It always does, he said. Words come after. They moved into the cabin before the first snow. The roof held strong. Smoke curled from the chimney each morning and the floor stayed warm with the pelts she'd sewn herself. Wayan added shelves for her drying herbs, and she carved a small spoon for the salt pot, shaping it slow over many evenings. They ate by firelight, shared stories only when the mood called, and let the quiet be its own language. She learned to recognize the sound of his footsteps when he returned from a hunt, and he came to rest easier when her hand lay across his side at night. One afternoon, after the thaw had begun, Wayan returned with a small bundle wrapped in a square of muslin. He handed it to her without a word. Inside lay 6 seed potatoes, firm and promising. She held them to her chest. "I'll plant them by the creek. They'll grow there," he said. "So will we." In the summer, a traveler passed through their land. Older, with a limp and a mule too thin for comfort. He asked only for water and shade. Wayan offered both. Olivia brought him bread. The man didn't ask questions, and when he left, he tipped his hat and said, "You two got something the world forgot how to keep." She watched him go, then turned to Wayan. "He's right." Wayan only reached for her hand, their fingers laced without thinking. The years passed slow and full. Olivia's garden grew wide and green, her hands always stained with soil and the scent of mint. Wayan trapped in winter, fished in spring, and carved in the evenings. They repaired the roof each fall, cooked together, argued sometimes, never loud, never cruel, and always with resolution before nightfall. One morning, she sat by the river, a woven shawl around her shoulders, the sun rising gold over the hills. Wayan joined her wordlessly, easing down beside her. She leaned into him, her head against his shoulder. "Did you ever think we'd find peace?" she asked. "I didn't know what it looked like," he said. "Now I do." She smiled, eyes on the water. "Tell me, it looks like you, barefoot in the frost. It sounds like your breath when you sleep. It feels like this." He wrapped his arm around her, and they sat watching the river move, slow and sure. When they were older and the trees had grown thicker around the cabin, a boy came to stay with them, a nephew of Taysai's, orphaned in a fire. Wayan taught him to hunt. Olivia taught him to plant. And when he laughed, the sound echoed through the trees like it belonged there. On the day of their 30th spring, Wayan carved a new spoon. Olivia baked bread that rose the way she liked. They sat by the hearth, hands still calloused, hearts still tethered. "I'd choose it all again," she said. "So would I." And when night came, they lay down beneath the same roof they had built together, wrapped in the same warmth, bound by a love grown from grief, quiet, and earned hope. They never left that land. They never had to.